So think about the last time you downloaded a highly recommended app. Like a friend tells you it's amazing. You open it up, poke around for maybe, I don't know, 45 seconds,
Right.
and you just feel this weird, inexplicable wave of exhaustion,
Oh, yeah.
and then you just close it. And then a week later, you end up deleting it just to free up storage space on your phone.
Yeah, the classic app graveyard.
Exactly. But what actually happened in those 45 seconds? Like, why did an app that someone else absolutely swore by feel like a total chore to you?
I mean, it's a completely universal experience. And the funny thing is, we tend to blame ourselves.
I do.
We think, I just didn't have the attention span for it today, or maybe I'm just too set in my ways to learn a new tool.
But the reality is actually much more mechanical than that. And honestly, it is entirely by design.
Yeah.
So today, we are taking a really deep dive into the hidden architecture of why certain products become these absolute daily addictions, while others just silently vanish.
It's a fascinating mechanism.
It really is. So if you're joining us today, whether you are, say, an engineer prepping for a massive tech review, or maybe you're a founder trying to figure out why your users keep churning, or honestly, if you're just insanely curious about why you reach for your phone first thing in the morning without even thinking about it, you are in exactly the right place.
Yeah, and we have a brilliant source to unpack for this. We're looking at the insights from Habit Machine, AI Product Management. It's written by Dr. Vladimir Dyachkov.
And I really want to set the stage with who this author is, because, this isn't some theoretical ivory tower philosophy book.
No, not at all.
Dr. Dyachkov has a PhD in behavioral economics, which is fascinating on its own, but he actually applies it in the trenches. He has built AI-driven systems using World Health Organization data, managed payment integrations that churned out like 9-figure profits.
That's wild.
Right, and perhaps most relevant to what we're talking about today, he has scaled mobile apps to an absolutely staggering 180 million monthly active users.
Yeah, 180 million. I mean, that combination is what makes this source so compelling. You really rarely see academic behavioral economics, which is the rigorous study of how human psychology actually drives our decisions, married to raw, massive-scale product management like that.
Exactly. He is taking the literal science of how our brains process information and using it to dictate software architecture.
Yeah, and his core thesis, the mission we're setting out to prove for you today, is just a total rejection of the standard Silicon Valley playbook.
The classic playbook.
Right, the one that says, build a better product, add more features, make the software faster, give it a sleeker user interface, and adoption will just naturally follow.
Which he aggressively calls an uncomfortable truth for developers to swallow, and fundamentally a complete myth.
Yeah, total myth.
Which I have to admit sounds a little crazy at first, because he's arguing that breakout products never win just by having better features. They win exclusively through behavioral design. Like, they win because they quietly rewrite how people work, how they communicate, and how they make daily decisions.
Okay, let's unpack this and look at the historical landscape for a second. Think about Uber. Did Uber invent the concept of ride-sharing or, hiring a car?
Definitely not.
No. Taxis existed for a century. Private black car services existed. Or look at a more modern example from the text, Cursor, the AI coding tool. They certainly did not invent the code editor. Programmers have had tools to write code for decades.
Right.
But what did these products actually do? They engineered entirely new behavioral defaults at a massive scale, to the point where the old ways of doing things now just feel like a bad dream.
I love that phrase, a bad dream, because it perfectly captures the feeling. I mean, do you remember what it was actually like to get a taxi to the airport in, say, 2008?
Oh, it was awful.
You had to call a dispatcher. You had to physically explain where you were on the phone. You had to just hope the car actually showed up because there was no way to track it.
And then during the ride?
Yes. You had this low-level anxiety watching the physical meter tick up, just sitting there wondering if you had enough cash or hoping the driver wouldn't suddenly claim the credit card machine was broken.
Yeah, which happened all the time.
All the time. So Uber didn't just give us cars. They removed the cognitive load of that entire transaction.
That is the exact mechanism. They didn't win on the feature of transportation. They won on the behavioral design of removing transaction anxiety.
Okay, I hear you. But I want to push back on this a little bit. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Because when I look at my own behavior, or when I look at how anyone shops, we are obsessed with features.
Sure.
Like, if I'm buying a new TV, I have 10 browser tabs open. I am comparing the refresh rate, the OLED specs, the exact dimensions, the port selection. It really feels like deep down, the consumer desperately wants features. How does the author square that with this idea that features don't matter?
What's fascinating here is that this is the crucial distinction that trips up so many product teams. You have to separate what we think we want when we make a purchasing decision from what actually dictates our daily repetitive behavior.
Okay, what do you mean?
When you're standing in a Best Buy, looking at a TV, or when you have those 10 tabs open, you are operating a highly conscious comparative state. Your brain is fully engaged in an analytical task.
Right, I'm doing the math.
Exactly. But daily product usage, the thing that keeps an app alive on your phone for years, is not a conscious analytical process.
Yeah.
It is entirely habitual.
So I'm not doing a feature matrix comparison when I wake up and check my email at 7 in the morning.
Precisely. You aren't weighing the pros and cons of your email client at 7 a.m. You are just executing a routine.
Wow, yeah.
So the real leverage for a product team isn't engineering velocity. It isn't shipping 10 new features a month. It is behavioral design. The goal isn't to solve a user's problem with a shiny new button. The goal is to replace a legacy routine so seamlessly that the user completely forgets the old friction ever existed.
And Dr. Dashkoff points out that if a company just ships features faster and faster without understanding this behavioral alignment,
They just accelerate their own churn.
yeah, they are literally just building more things for users to ignore.
Exactly, because the user's brain is already overwhelmed. Which brings us to a really fascinating biological point in the source material.
Let's get into it.
If the sheer number of features isn't the moat that protects a successful product from competitors, we have to look at what actually builds that moat. And the text points directly to the biology of the user, specifically combating what it calls the cognitive tax.
The cognitive tax. Okay, explain that.
This is where product management intersects with neuroscience. We have to understand that the human brain is fundamentally a prediction engine, and it is ruthlessly optimized for energy conservation.
Because thinking takes energy.
Exactly. Thinking, actual conscious analytical thinking, is metabolically expensive. It consumes a massive amount of glucose. So from an evolutionary standpoint, our brains want to default to familiar routines because those routines bypass the prefrontal cortex.
They minimize cognitive load.
Yeah.
So when I open an app and immediately feel exhausted, it's not because I'm just being lazy. It's because my brain is detecting a high metabolic cost to figuring out that specific interface.
You are biologically wired to avoid that interface. To change a user's behavior, a new product must reduce the cognitive load below the threshold of whatever that user is currently doing.
I'm trying to picture how this actually feels in practice. It's almost like, okay, imagine I have to walk through the woods behind my house every day to get to work.
Okay.
And there's a path that's incredibly muddy. It ruins my shoes. It takes 20 minutes, but I take it every single day. Why? Because the alternative is grabbing a machete and spending 3 days hacking through thick brush to create a new, shorter path.
Right.
The muddy path is terrible, but the cognitive and physical load of creating the new path is just way too high to bother.
That is an excellent way to visualize the status quo bias. The user is walking the muddy path. A traditional product manager looks at that user and says, hey, here is a newly engineered titanium machete.
Okay.
It's 20% lighter than a standard machete. Go chop your new path.
And the user says, no thanks, I'll stick to the mud.
Exactly. Because the titanium machete is just a feature. A brilliantly designed behavioral product doesn't hand the user a tool. It paves a 4-lane asphalt highway through the woods overnight.
Wow.
So the next morning, the user looks at the muddy path, looks at the highway, and taking the old path suddenly feels absurd.
And the book actually has hard data to back up how sensitive we are to this cognitive tax, right? It's
Yeah.
not just a nice theory.
Far from it. The author cites a highly specific study from the Journal of Marketing Research. They found that reducing decision steps by even 2 interactions, just 2 clicks, or 2 form fields, can increase task completion rate by over 30%.
Wait, really? Just removing 2 clicks gets a 30% bump.
Literally 2 clicks, 30% bump.
That is a massive return on investment for simply deleting a step.
It proves how fragile our attention and energy reserves actually are. But the data gets even more demanding than that.
How so?
There is a meta-analysis on habit formation referenced in the book that focuses on a metric called time to first value.
Okay.
It shows that if a user experiences that first aha moment of value in under 3 minutes, they are 3 times more likely to still be using the product 30 days later.
Under 3 minutes. So the biological clock starts ticking the absolute millisecond I tap download.
Yes. You have a maximum of 180 seconds to deliver a meaningful payoff. If you force that user to endure a complex onboarding tutorial or
Yeah.
if they have to navigate a maze of configuration settings before the app actually does anything
We'll
useful,
lose them.
you are actively starving the habit formation process. The cognitive tax is draining their energy before they even see the benefit.
Which explains why my motivation to learn a new language on an app drops to absolute zero if the app makes me fill out a 10-page profile first.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't matter how motivated I was when I woke up. The friction just destroys the motivation.
Precisely. The text emphasizes a golden rule here. Environmental cues and friction reduction will beat sheer motivation every single time.
So you can't just rely on willpower.
You cannot rely on your user's willpower. Willpower is finite. Frictionless design is infinite.
Okay, so understanding the psychology that we are these energy-conserving prediction engines that desperately need a paved highway is incredibly clarifying. But a founder can't just walk into a dev team meeting and say, hey guys, make it a paved highway.
Right, that doesn't mean anything to an engineer.
Knowing the psychology doesn't automatically build the software. How do the companies that actually win execute this?
They execute it through a very specific sequential architecture. Dr. Dykov lays out a core framework in the text called the signal-to-standard pipeline.
The signal-to-standard pipeline.
Category-defining products, the ones that completely take over an industry move through a predictable four-phase progression. They never just stumble into market dominance.
So let's trace that progression. How does a company even initiate this behavioral change? Because it has to start before the user even downloads the product, right?
It does. It starts with stage one, the signal. And we need to be very careful to define what a signal actually is, because the text makes a stark differentiation between a signal and traditional marketing.
Okay, so a signal is not just a marketing campaign.
No, a signal is not a pitch deck. It is not a clever slogan cooked up by an ad agency.
The book defines it as a counterintuitive message that challenges the status quo, offering a behavioral promise that the user can test immediately.
Yes.
And the example that really jumped out at me from the source was perplexity. We all know how dominated the search engine market is. It's essentially a monopoly.
Completely.
If Perplexity had launched with a marketing slogan that said, you know, a faster, better search engine, that would just be a feature battle against a trillion-dollar giant.
Which is a losing game.
Right, because better search doesn't challenge the fundamental behavior of how we search.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their signal was a totally new logic.
Yeah.
The signal was essentially, stop clicking through a grid of blue links and get synthesized answers instead.
Which is a massive behavioral shift.
Huge. They are telling you to abandon the routine of opening 5 tabs to cross-reference information.
I just want the answer. I don't want the links.
And that is what makes a signal inherently behavioral. Let's unpack the psychological distinction here because it's vital. Think about a standard marketing tagline. Something like, the sharpest screen on the market.
Right.
That is selling an attribute. It asks the user to compare specs. A signal, on the other hand, sells a new routine. It must reduce cognitive friction before it even requires the user to commit.
It's answering the subconscious question, why should I expend the energy to behave differently right now?
Yes. Think about Apple Pay when it first launched.
Oh, that's a great example.
The signal wasn't, we utilize near-field communication architecture with tokenized biometric encryption.
I mean, that's the engineering reality.
But it's a terrible signal. The behavioral signal was, pay with one gesture.
Wow. Pay with one gesture. That immediately promises the elimination of so much friction.
Instantly.
I don't have to fish my wallet out of my pocket. I don't have to figure out which way the chip goes into the reader. I don't have to wait for the receipt to print. It invites me into a much lower friction reality.
And because it promises that lower friction, it easily bypasses the status quo bias. The user actively wants that new reality.
But here is the trap. I can put out the most compelling frictionless signal in the world. I can convince millions of people to download my app based on the promise of one gesture or synthesized answers. But the second they open the app, if they hit a wall of complexity...
That signal is dead on arrival.
Yeah, which brings us to the next part.
Right, which is the most dangerous transition in product development.
Yeah.
You have made the promise, now you have to bridge the gap to action. This is stage 2 of the pipeline, the interaction shift.
The bridge. This is where that 3-minute time to first value clock we talked about earlier becomes a do or die metric.
Absolutely. The new behavior you are asking the user to adopt must, from the very first tap, require less mental tax than their old routine. If the onboarding feels like work, you've already lost. The signal was a lie.
The text uses some great examples from the software world here to illustrate this, specifically looking at tools that developers use. It brings up Linear, the project management tool, and contrasts it with legacy systems like Jira.
Jira is a perfect example of legacy friction.
Oh my gosh, Jira is like, you want to update a task, so you have to take your hands off the keyboard, grab the mouse, wait for a heavy web page to load, find the specific custom field, click a drop down, wait 3 seconds for the drop down scroll, assign a ticket, and hit save.
It is the digital equivalent of filling out paperwork at the DMV.
Exactly. So how did Linear attack this? They didn't win by adding more fields or better drop downs.
No, they didn't add features.
They engineered an interaction shift. They built a keyboard-native, lightning-fast interface. A developer could just hit Command-K, type a few words, hit Enter, and the task was updated without ever touching the mouse.
They replaced a bureaucratic nightmare with a workflow that actually respected the developer's focus.
And we see the exact same interaction shift with Cursor, the AI editor mentioned in the text.
Yes, Cursor is fascinating. Let's clarify what that environment used to look like. Historically, if a programmer got stuck, they had to constantly context switch.
Right.
They would leave their ID, their integrated development environment, basically the digital workbench where they write code, and they would open a browser, search a forum, copy a snippet of code, paste it back into their workbench, and try to stitch it together.
Massive friction. Massive cognitive load.
Huge. So what did Cursor do differently?
They integrated what's called a RAG-grounded environment directly into the workbench, right?
Yes. RE stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Okay, in simple terms.
In simple terms, instead of an AI just giving you a generic answer from the internet, the AI in Cursor can actually read your specific private code base in real time. So the interaction shift is profound.
Oh, I see.
Instead of leaving your workspace to search for generic answers, you just type a question to the AI right where you are working, and it writes the exact code you need tailored to your files. The fragmented nightmare collapses into a single conversational interaction.
It's like, okay, let's go back to the house analogy.
I like this analogy.
Imagine you buy a beautiful new house based on the real estate listing. The listing promised a relaxing, turnkey lifestyle. That's your stage 1 signal.
Right.
But you get the keys, you walk through the front door, and there is no furniture. Just a massive pile of lumber, some screws, and a confusing instruction manual.
You have to build the couch before you can sit down.
Yes. I don't care how nice the view out the window is. The interaction cost of sitting down is entirely too high. I'm going back to my old cramped apartment where my old comfortable couch already exists.
That is the essence of the friction tax. Dr. Diachkov makes a brutal rule very clear in the book. If you have to explain the interface to the user, if you have to provide a manual to build the couch, the interaction shift has failed.
The legibility of the product must be immediate.
Exactly. The user must instinctively know how to sit down.
Okay, so the interaction shift is about proving that the promise of the signal is real instantly. You get the user to sit on the couch seamlessly within those first 3 minutes.
Right.
But doing something successfully one time does not mean I actually live in the house yet. Once that first interaction is cleared, the challenge for the product completely transforms. It's no longer about a single task. It's about building a daily addiction.
Which takes us right into stage 3 of the pipeline, the habit loop.
The habit loop.
This is where adoption turns into actual retention. And the text relies heavily on a structured psychological loop here. Trigger, action, variable reward, and investment.
I really want to dissect this loop because this is where the psychology gets incredibly granular. The book uses Slack as the prime example of mastering this loop.
Slack is the gold standard here.
Think about what corporate communication looked like before Slack. It was a mess of ambient team chatter, lost in physical hallways, or buried in massive formal email chains.
Slack captured that ambient chatter and digitized it into a loop. Let's break it down. First, the trigger.
The notification.
Exactly. The little red dot, or that specific knock brush sound on your phone. It is a sensory cue.
Which prompts the action. I click the notification and open the app.
Yes. But the critical component, the thing that actually rewires your brain to want to open the app the next time, is the third step, the variable reward.
And we really need to pause and clarify variable reward because I see this misunderstood by tech companies constantly.
Oh, all the time.
When people hear the word reward in software, they immediately think of cheap gamification. They think, oh, we need to build a habit loop. Let's give the user a shiny digital badge when they log in.
Right.
Let's put a leaderboard on the dashboard. Let's have digital confetti explode across the screen when they click submit.
So no digital confetti.
That is exactly what Dr. Deichkov warns against. The text is definitive on this. Variable reward does not mean superficial gamification. Badges and confetti lose their dopamine hit after the third time you see them.
They become invisible.
True variable reward means the product occasionally and unpredictably delivers genuine utility or insight that the user actually cares about.
So applying that to Slack, the reward isn't a badge. The reward is the unpredictability of the information itself.
Yes.
When I hear that Slack notification, I don't know what it is. Is it an urgent update on a project I'm stressed about? Is it a piece of juicy office gossip? Is it a hilarious meme from a coworker?
The utility is real, but the exact nature and value of the payoff varies every single time.
And that variability is highly stimulating to the human brain. It's the slot machine effect, but applied to professional utility.
Exactly. Or look at another example from the text. Figma, the design software. Before Figma, the design process was excruciating.
Oh, I remember.
A designer would work on a file, save it as a PDF, email it to the team would email back a list of changes, the designer would save version 2 final, and email it again.
A massive cognitive
It's
task.
huge. Figma turned that into a live collaborative loop. You send a link, and suddenly you are all in the file together.
A variable reward there.
The variable reward in Figma is seeing your colleague's cursor flying across your screen, instantly moving a button or changing a color, and solving a design problem in real time. It's a massive, unpredictable payoff of utility.
But I'm putting myself in the shoes of a product manager listening to this. Delivering unpredictable utility sounds a bit abstract.
Yeah.
Stuff like vibes.
Yeah, how do you measure vibes?
How do I actually know mathematically if my habit loop is functioning? How do I measure a psychological loop?
The author provides a vital, ruthless metric for exactly this. Day 7 retention.
Okay, day 7 retention.
This is your canary in the coal mine. It's very simple. Let's say a cohort of 100 people download your app on a Monday. Day 7 retention asks, how many of those specific 100 people organically open the app the following Monday?
The benchmark in the text is 40%, right?
Yes. If your day 7 retention sits below 40% for a core cohort, your habit loop is broken, period.
It means the variable reward wasn't strong enough to justify the cognitive cost of returning.
So out of 100 people, if only 30 come back a week later, I have a fundamental architectural problem.
Correct. And this is where so many startups burn through their funding. If that loop is broken, but you keep pouring marketing dollars into acquiring new users,
You're in trouble.
you are quite literally subsidizing your own churn. You are paying money to pour water into a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom. You must fix the loop, the trigger, the action, the reward before you earn the right to scale.
Okay, let's say you do it. You nail the interaction shift. Your variable reward is highly stimulating, and your day 7 retention is sitting at a healthy 60%. The habit loop is locked in for an individual user.
That's a great spot to be in.
But a single user having a good habit doesn't create a billion-dollar company. Something magical has to happen where an entire organization or an entire society adopts that loop.
And that transitions us to the final, most powerful stage of the pipeline. Stage 4, institutional lock.
Institutional lock. This is the absolute endgame of behavioral design, right?
It is. This is when a product stops being a tool and becomes pure infrastructure. When a behavior reaches institutional lock, it achieves what the author calls default status.
Waltz status.
At this stage, competitors aren't just trying to win a feature comparison, they're trying to overcome switching costs that feel like breaking a binding legal contract.
The book uses Ramp as a phenomenal case study for this. For context, Ramp is a corporate finance and credit card platform.
Right.
Now, if Ramp had just digitized corporate credit cards, they would just be another bank. They'd be competing on interest rates or cashback features. But they didn't do that.
No, they systematically embedded themselves into the actual behavior of a finance team. Let's look at the old behavior.
Okay.
An employee travels, buys a coffee, loses the paper receipt. 3 weeks later, accounting sends an angry email.
Ugh.
The employee guesses the expense category, and the accountant manually types it into a ledger.
High friction for literally everyone involved.
So what did Ramp do to create institutional lock? They changed the workflow at the point of sale.
Oh.
The employee swipes the Ramp card. Ramp instantly sends a text asking for a photo of the receipt. The employee snaps a picture. Ramp's AI automatically reads the receipt, categorizes the expense, matches it to the transaction, and verifies it against the company's expense policy.
Wow.
And if the employee tries to buy something out of policy, the card simply declines.
So the accounting department essentially has to do Nothing.
Exactly. The compliance, the matching, the ledger entry, it's all automated. Now, connect this to the bigger picture. Imagine a finance team that has spent 2 years building their entire month-end closing process around Ramp.
Okay.
If a competitor comes along and says, hey, we have a card with a slightly better cashback feature, the finance team isn't going to care. Displacing Ramp would require actual organizational trauma.
That is such a powerful phrase. Organizational trauma. Let me bring this directly to you, the listener. Think about the software stack your specific team relies on every single day.
Yeah, think about what you use.
Maybe it's Salesforce for your sales data. Maybe it's GitHub for your code repository. Maybe it's AWS. Imagine if your CEO walked into the office tomorrow morning and said, hey, everyone, I found a cheaper tool. We are completely switching away from Salesforce on Monday.
The reaction wouldn't just be annoyance.
It would be a literal revolt. People would be threatening to quit. You'd have pitchforks in the break room because the cost of leaving the old way is terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
You have to relearn complex workflows. You have to safely migrate years of historical data. You lose all the automated shortcuts you've built.
That revolt, that panic, that is the sound of institutional lock.
Wow.
The psychological and operational cost of switching has become vastly more expensive than the perceived benefit of the new, cheaper tool. When your product is the one that causes a company-wide panic if someone suggests removing it, you have won the market. You are the standard.
It's an incredible blueprint. Signal, interaction shift, habit loop, institutional lock. It sounds so logical when we lay it out like this, which naturally leads to a huge question.
I think I know what you're going to ask.
If this behavioral pipeline is so clear and the psychology is so well understood, why do we see so many hyped up, massively funded product launches completely and utterly fail? I mean, the tech industry is littered with the corpses of game-changing apps that died in 6 months.
It is a massive graveyard, and the source material dedicates a significant portion to analyzing this graveyard of good ideas.
Why do most signals die before they ever reach that scale?
The core reason, which we touched on briefly, is that founders and product teams constantly confuse novelty with necessity.
They think because something is new and shiny, people will automatically want to do the work to learn it.
Yes, they completely underestimate the status quo bias. Behavioral economics tells us unequivocally that people will tolerate a highly suboptimal, frustrating system if the cost of switching feels uncertain.
Right.
A new product might be objectively and mathematically better on paper. But if the user feels uncertain about how long it will take to learn the new interface, or if they're afraid they might lose their old data during the transition,
They will simply stay with the broken tool they already know.
the devil you know is always perceived as safer than the devil you don't, even if the devil you don't know promises to be an angel.
Precisely. Signals die in the graveyard when they ask the user for a behavioral change without delivering an immediate, tangible reward in that 3-minute window.
Or they die when they introduce new configuration complexities instead of removing them.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Or, and this is incredibly common in enterprise business software, they die when they target a workflow that nobody in the company actually owns or cares about fixing.
And Dr. Deichkoff is pretty ruthless about how to measure this failure, too. It's not just a gut feeling that your product is dying. It's not just vibes.
No, he outlines 3 hard mathematical leading indicators that show if a product is legitimately scaling or if it is secretly heading for the graveyard.
These 3 metrics are the pulse check of behavioral design.
Right. We already deep dived into the first one, base 7 retention. Out of 100 users, do 40 come back a week later?
Right.
Did that first interaction create enough value to warrant a second visit?
Right. If that fails, stop everything and fix the loop. What is the second indicator?
The second indicator is a viral coefficient, which is often referred to in growth circles simply as K, or the K factor.
The K factor. Okay, let's break down the math on the K factor because I know it can sound intimidating. What does it actually measure?
It measures compounding organic pull. Basically, how many new users each existing active user brings into the product organically.
So if you have 100 active users,
And they invite 120 new people who actually sign up, your K factor is 1.2. The product is growing exponentially on its own through word of mouth or built-in collaboration features.
like sending a Figma link to a client.
Exactly. But the book sets a specific danger zone for this metric.
What's the danger zone?
If your K factor drops below 0.8, meaning 100 users are bringing in fewer than 80 new users, you are in trouble.
Because it's shrinking.
It means the product does not have enough behavioral gravity to spread itself. If your K factor is born 8, your organic growth is slowly decaying, which means the only way your company can continue to grow is by artificially buying every single new customer through paid advertising.
Which eventually bankrupts you.
Exactly. It breaks your unit economics at scale. A product must spread itself through social reinforcement or ecosystem utility to survive long term.
And that ties perfectly into the third ruthless indicator, which is a ratio, LTV over CAC.
Lifetime value compared to customer acquisition cost.
This is the ultimate test of a business model. Let's define the terms for everyone. Customer acquisition cost, or CAC, is how much money in marketing and sales it takes to get one person to sign up.
Right.
Lifetime value, or LTV, is the total amount of gross profit that one user will generate for you over the entire time they use your product.
And the author says this ratio needs to stabilize at or above 3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Meaning, if you were spending $100 in Facebook ads to acquire a new user, that user needs to stick around long enough and pay enough to generate at least $300 in lifetime value.
So connecting this back to the behavioral design, if your habit loop is broken and users are churning after a month, their lifetime value plummets.
Exactly. If you spend $100 to acquire them, but they get frustrated by the cognitive tax, fail to form a habit, and churn after generating only $50 in value, your ratio is upside down.
You are literally subsidizing your own churn.
You aren't scaling a software business. You are just setting venture capital money on fire.
So taking a step back and looking at all of this, what actually happens inside a company when a team is sitting in a boardroom looking at a beautifully designed app that they spent a year building, and they just choose to ignore these metrics?
It's tragic, honestly.
What happens when they see the day 7 retention is at 15%, but they just say, oh, the users just need to understand it better? The retention will definitely go up once we add these 5 new features on our roadmap.
That is the most common delusion in the tech industry. The author argues that teams who ignore these behavioral metrics are fatally mistaking early excitement for actual traction.
They treat retention and behavioral alignment as if they are marketing problems.
Yes. Things that can be solved with a better email drip campaign, or a slicker onboarding video, or just adding a new feature.
They treat behavioral psychology as a soft skill.
Precisely. They view UI polish as the product and behavioral design as an add-on. But Dr. Dyachkov's entire thesis is that behavioral design is not the paint on the walls. It is the operating system for market creation. It is the foundation of the house itself.
And if you build a beautiful house on a foundation of high cognitive load, broken habit loops, and massive friction,
no amount of marketing paint will keep the structure from collapsing into the graveyard.
because the market is ruthlessly efficient at filtering out friction.
It really is.
Man, that is incredibly clarifying. It fundamentally changes how you look at the screen time report on your phone, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
To synthesize this entire journey we've been on today, the truly great products, the ones that endure for decades and define our modern workflows, do not win by handing you a spec sheet of features.
They systematically move you.
They capture your attention with a compelling, frictionless signal. They pull you across the bridge with a seamless interaction shift that delivers value in under 3 minutes.
They embed you into a habitual routine with unpredictable variable rewards.
And finally, they lock you and your entire team into a new standard through institutional lock, making the cost of leaving unthinkable. It is a masterclass in behavioral pipeline architecture.
And it's an architecture that requires relentless discipline and a deep empathy for the biological limits of the user's brain to execute successfully.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We started by talking about how murky and frustrating the landscape of human behavior can be, and why we often blame ourselves when a product feels too hard to use. I want you to look at the digital tools you are forced to use every single day. Specifically, I want you to think about the ones you constantly complain about.
We all have them.
The legacy software at your job that takes 10 clicks to do one simple task. The app that makes you want to pull your hair out, but that you never actually leave because the switching costs are too high.
Think about the friction you are tolerating.
Yes. Ask yourself, what is the specific friction you are tolerating right now in those tools? Because that annoyance you feel every day, that cognitive tax that exhausts you, that is not your fault.
No, it's bad design.
That friction is just a signal waiting for someone else, maybe even you, to come along, pave a new highway, and turn it into tomorrow's new behavioral standard.
Where there is legacy friction, there is massive opportunity.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to look at your daily digital habits and the products you're building, buying, or just tolerating through this new behavioral lens. Until next time, keep questioning the default.